was supposed to join us, but they are having technical problems and are not able to join us, so you get her all to yourself this morning. So, I'm going to turn it over to Sue, and she'll say a few things, and then we'll just have this nice little conversation. I think you can leave your microphone open. We don't have to keep muting back and forth, just so it becomes more like a conversation. As long as there isn't a lot of extra noise, moving chairs or rattling papers or anything. So, and what grade are you in?
Fifth grade.
Fifth grade.
Fifth grade. Okay. Okay, well, here is Sue Stauffacher.
So, fifth grade. So you're in the same grade as Franklin is. Wonder if there's any identification with him. Maybe not. He's pretty weird. Okay, so we have, it's really, it doesn't happen very often, but every once in a while we end up with just one class, and that makes kind of a different experience. And actually, I like it because we don't have to keep switching back and forth, and we can just have a nice chat. And so what I'd like to do, if it's okay with you, is just start off with your questions. And then during the course of our conversation, I'm sure a lot of other things will come up that I think of that I'd like to talk about. So, why don't you guys start?
Keegan?
Did you like writing Donut Head?
Now, actually, we're getting some, it's kind of crackly. So, go ahead and ask that louder, and then maybe we can resolve the issue.
Did you like writing Donut Head?
Did I like writing Donut Head? Well, let me ask you a question. Does it feel like I liked writing it when you were reading it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was having a lot of fun with him. He was a fun character to write because he's a guy who's afraid of everything, and the other thing is, that might make him seem like an object of pity. But he was so certain that he was right. He just couldn't figure out why everybody else wasn't afraid of everything too. And so that's what made it funny. And I just enjoy writing funny stuff.
Sammy?
What made you come up with the idea of Donut Head? Like of the character guy?
Right, the character. Well, at first I used to tell kids I don't know where the idea came from, and then now that it's been a while since I wrote it, I realized that I started writing this at the same month that the terrorist attacks came in New York. And I think afterwards, I think I created this character who's afraid of everything, and that we could laugh with and laugh about. Because I think I was feeling kind of afraid and that things were out of control. And I thought kids were maybe feeling that too. So I think that's why I came up with the idea. But other than that, I don't have a specific thing that sparked it.
Shayla?
How'd you come up with the characters' names and their personality?
Well, I think I just talked about the personality, about him being afraid of everything. The character's name, now, I thought I made that up, but this is an interesting thing about creative stuff, is that you can think you had an idea. Have you ever had an argument with a friend where they said, that was my idea, I told that to you yesterday? Well, sometimes we think our ideas are our original ideas, and I thought Franklin Delano Donut Head was my original idea, but a few years after I published the book, I saw on the back of another book that I had read a couple years before I wrote Donut Head, one character saying to the other character, "Who do you think you are, Franklin Delano Biscuit Head?" So, now I'm wondering, did I just copy that from this other guy? It can happen.
Patrick?
Where did you come up with the idea for Sarah?
Sarah, she's an interesting one, isn't she? Well, Sarah is, okay, so I think I have it right here. I wrote this book about Althea Gibson. It's called Nothing. Now this is so hard because it's like doing it in a mirror. This is Nothing But Trouble, and Althea Gibson was the first African American woman to compete and win at Wimbledon. And I read her autobiography, which means that's the story of her life as she's telling it. And do you know, years later I wrote Sarah Kervick, and she's just, oh my gosh, this is so hilarious. We've got this dog thing going on over here. And now Casey's in the room and she's crying. Okay, so if you hear crying, that's not me, all right? It's the dog. And so now she's trying to get her out of the room, but I'm going to focus. Okay, so Sarah. So Althea Gibson, I read her autobiography, and she talks about things like the ground floor punch. And years later, I write Sarah Kervick, and she's just like a young Althea Gibson. She's tough on the outside, and she's kind of soft-hearted on the inside. You know, she does things like saves Bernie's cards for him, so you know she's not all mean. She's just got a tough exterior. Dog is now out of the room. I think she lured him with treats.
Sammy?
When did you write? When did you get done writing the book?
Say it one more time.
When did you get done writing the book?
You know, I probably wrote the book for about 6 or 8 months, and I write by hand, and I try to write 3 pages a day. So the first version was about, it was about 100 manuscript pages, so it probably took about 4 or 5 months, because I don't write every single day. So it probably took 4 or 5 months to write that. And then when I sent it in to my editor, she liked it, but for example, Bernie wasn't in
Band
it. There was
students,
no
if you
Bernie.
haven't turned in your checkout slip, you need to
So-
turn it in as you're being excused. And please excuse the band
Is that
students
over
and
your
choir
microphone?
students to go to the district music.
Intercom.
Yes, we had an announcement here. That's all right, we're done.
Okay. Okay, so there was no Bernie in the first version of Donut Head. So my editor takes it, and she reads it, and then she makes a bunch of suggestions. So then I get it back and I revise it. So the whole process probably took about 1.5 years. So I was probably finished in sometime in 2002, and Donut Head came out in 2003.
Lou?
What are some other books that you've wrote?
Well, my very first book was written in 1992, and that was called Sagana, the Black Whale. And it was about a boy who tries to rescue a captive killer whale. It was actually written before the Free Willy movies. And then I wrote a collection of folk tales called The Angel and Other Stories, then Donut Head, then Harry Sue, then Donut Heart. Which is, I don't know if you've seen Donut Heart, but that's when Franklin goes to middle school. And then, let's see what came after that. I have some picture books that
Well, they'll reconnect here in a minute. Maybe. You remember Althea Gibson, the book we did last year?
We read that. It's the same author that we talked
Yeah.
about.
You guys, if you're in a chair that moves, try to sit.
Yeah, some of these chairs have really squeaky, a lot of squeakiness.
That's what it is.
Don't lean back. Just sit quiet.
And then you're standing up to a hot standing up.
Welcome to Unified Conferencing.
E-address.
oh,
So they're coming back on now.
Yes, we're back.
well,
We're back.
where did you go? Were you like in cyberspace somewhere for those minute or two? So I'm sure I was telling you something very fascinating. It was about my books, and so I have one called Bessie Smith and the Night Riders, and I have this book, Tilly the Terrible Swede, about a famous bicycle racer from the 1890s, And then I have this Animal Rescue Team series, where 4 books about a family of urban wildlife rehabilitators. And I'm working on 2 more books right now for Random House. One is a young adult novel that will be out just about the time you guys are ready to be reading young adult novels, if you aren't already. And the other one is a novel probably set in 5th grade, just like Donut Head is.
What's your favorite book that you wrote?
Oh, you know, I always say this, but my favorite book is usually the one I'm working on at the moment because I get really involved in the books while I'm writing them. But since you can't read that one because it's not even published yet, I will say that if the other 2 suggestions I would make for you guys is to read Donut Heart and Harry Sue, because those are all favorites of mine. Donut Head, Donut Heart, and Harry Sue.
Caleb?
What book are you working on now?
Well, see, it's considered a young adult novel, and it's the main characters are about 16 years old, and it's kind of a strange, moody book about a boy who steals things from cemeteries, and a cop who is sort of circling around him. And what it's really about is that someone in their community died before the book opens, and how everybody kind of deals with the death of a teenager, because that's such a tragedy and it's so hard to overcome. So it's really not like Donut Head at all. It has some funny moments, but it's not really funny. That's not the way you describe it.
Jaden?
How many books have you wrote?
I think I've published about a dozen or maybe a little more. I kind of lost track, but how many have I written? Probably twice as many as that, because some books you write, people don't buy them to publish them. So I've had as many failures as I've had successes.
When you were younger, did you want to be an author or did you want to have a different job?
I really didn't think of myself as an author when I was younger in part because I never had an experience like this where I could actually meet an author and see that they were, fairly normal, 2 eyes, 2 ears. I just, and of course when I was growing up, we didn't have the media possibilities to see these things that you do. So I remember when I went to college, I wanted to be a social worker. And then about halfway through, I decided I might be an English major, and then by the end of college, the purpose of college, at least in my mind, and I have 2 boys right now in college, so hopefully this is happening to them too, is that you get to start to see all different kinds of possibilities, and you take classes and you find which ones you really enjoy, like where is the place where you're going to feel really happy contributing. And so that's when I decided I wanted to be an author, and I was probably my 3rd year in college.
Shayla?
What's your favorite part of the book of Donut Head?
Well, I'm kind of curious, again, because we're just sort of having a conversation, to hear what your favorite parts are. Maybe 2 or 3 of you could say what your favorite parts are, and then I'll tell you which one is mine. How's that?
Keegan? What was your favorite?
My favorite part was when the girl and his mom teach him how to play baseball.
When the girls and the
Mom helped him play.
We don't have a really good connection. It's some of your speech is kind of garbled, and that's why it's difficult for us to hear.
So maybe
I don't know if it would help to come up closer to the microphone.
or maybe the teacher can just repeat by the microphone.
We can repeat easily enough.
I think Keegan's favorite part was when the mom and the girl, Sarah, and Franklin were playing baseball, and they were teaching Sarah how to play, and they went to the baseball field. That's, I think, his favorite part.
Yeah,
Sarah.
Oh, right, yeah. And considering a life of crime. Okay, one more.
My favorite part of the book is when Sarah takes Franklin behind the school to make him comb her hair.
Wow, that's a good part too. Okay, well, I'd have to say that my favorite part is when Sarah gets the skates, you know, and she's just so overwhelmed. It's this idea that, and again, this is Althea Gibson too. Althea Gibson was this amazing athlete. Remember I said she was the first African-American woman to compete and win at Wimbledon. She was an amazing athlete, but she just ran around her city streets, and somebody looked at her and said, wow, she could be a great tennis player. And this older man who was one of the play leaders, he gave her a tennis racket. And so it was this idea of taking this potential incredible athlete and putting the right tool in her hand. And so, you know, this idea that Sarah's been pretending to skate, and then all of a sudden something she feels is completely far away from ever getting. She gets a pair of skates. That part to me was really fantastic.
Patrick, what was your favorite part?
My favorite part was when she beats up the kids to get the other kids' cards back.
Yeah, you know, I'm not supposed to like that, but sometimes it just feels good to let the bully get a little bit of his own medicine. And from a girl, too. Ooh. There's a great fight scene in Donut Heart. Not that I endorse that, but it is fun. And it involves a bag of flour.
Shayla?
Who or what inspired you to write Donut Head?
Well, I think we kind of talked about that. What inspired me to write it, it was this idea that I like the idea of a kid who's afraid of it. Is that the intercom yet? A kid who's afraid of everything, meeting a girl who's afraid of nothing. And I like the funniness of their interaction. But in the end, I think it really was about thinking about fear and how we let fear hold us back sometimes.
Anybody else have any more questions? Shayla?
Who or what inspired you to be an author? I said one thing.
Okay, so I love to read. I think that's really the simple answer to that question. I love reading, and as I started taking these classes in college, I realized I was more interested in the English classes and the writing classes. And you know, I'm not just a it's wonderful to be a children's book author, but I'm also a journalist, so I write articles and profiles of people, and I've worked in public relations and all kinds of different technical writing and writing fields. If you're a good writer, you can find work. It's an amazing thing.
Jaden?
What's your favorite book that you didn't write?
Favorite book you didn't write? That I didn't write. Wow. Well, there's a book I've always wanted to write about hobos. The guys after the Civil War who rode trains. You know, they hopped on train cars. And I've collected a lot of first-person accounts that were written around the late 1800s, 1900. And I'm really excited sometime in the future to sit down and write that novel. I think it's going to be fun.
I think he might have meant too, what's your favorite book to read that you didn't?
Oh, okay. So my favorite book to read that I didn't write. Well, we were this morning, an hour ago, someone was asking me what books I would recommend if you like Donut Head. And one of them is called Days of Summer by a guy named Steve Kluger, K-L-U-G-E-R. And that was the one where I stole the line, Franklin Delano Biscuit Head. But that's really a funny book about a kid about Donut Head's age. And Oh, and then I was also telling them about the Secret Diaries of Adrian Mole. And that's a British book, and it's told in diary form, first person, and this kid is really funny stuff.
Sammy?
What's your favorite series that you didn't write?
Wow. That is going to be harder for me to say because I tend to be one who doesn't really I read the first or second, but all the series that I read right now, I can't recommend to you because they're adult mystery series. They tend to be from Iceland, Sweden. I personally didn't like The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo that much, but it got way too gory for me. But I like other books that are like that just don't go that far. But I'm not sure I'd be reading them when I was in 5th grade.
Books this year.
Okay.
Do you have any advice for a young writer like some of us?
Well, I think, first of all, the thing we have to remember to do with writing is just to enjoy writing. We tend to think of it, a lot of kids only write when they have to write a paper, and then there's kind of high stakes, like I have to do well on this, and then maybe their teacher makes some comments on it, and it's like, oh, what a drag, now I have to rewrite it. Writing it's no different than learning to play basketball. You just practice, you try to enjoy the practice part of it, and you get better. So that's one thing, is just relax and enjoy it, and write things you are enjoying, that you would like to read. The other thing is read a lot, because just like watching people play basketball, you can learn a lot about how to play basketball yourself. Reading books and understanding what you like about them is one way to learn how to write better. And that's pretty pleasurable too. So I'm one of those people who really feels like kids will do more of something they find they take pleasure in. So find all the things around writing that you enjoy and do those things more.
One more advice. Your imagination plus experience.
Oh, okay. So Sue is reminding me that on my weblog, and on my website, which is just my name, SueStauffacher.com, my weblog is called Imaginarians, which is kind of taking the words imagination and experience and putting them together. So there's lots of elements of Donut Head that come out of my experience, but it's not my experience. It's my experience mixed together with my imagination.
What book does she have planned for the future?
I'm trying to think, hey, go ahead.
Cooper?
What do you have planned for the future? What book?
Say again?
What book do you have planned for the future?
Well, we talked a little bit about the 2 books that I'm writing right now. Do we have Donut Heart here? Mm-hmm. We do. All right, so have you guys read Donut Heart?
No.
No? Would you like me to read some of the beginning of that book to you?
Yeah.
Oh, there's a good idea. Okay. I think one of the coolest things that I think about kids being with an author is to hear the words that an author has written with them reading it, because of course I have an idea of how it should be read. So, chapter 1, so here's Donut Heart right here, and chapter 1 is called Fear of Flying. Now, and here it is. So can you hear me okay? Is everybody here clearly?
Yeah.
Okay. In the course of human events, it is sometimes necessary to reduce one's water intake to delay natural functioning. Using the boys' bathroom at Pelican View Middle School was to be avoided whenever possible. I will spare you the details of my first visit. It's enough to know that it involved me, Franklin Delano Donut Head, an industrial-sized roll of toilet paper, and an 8th grader's knowledge of ancient Egyptian mummification techniques. The problem is the adolescent body is 75% water, and what goes in must come out, just not in the boys' bathroom. Note, I did not say the boys' and girls' bathrooms. All you need is a peek through the open door to realize that girls can attend to their business behind closed doors. I am still working through my feelings about this. Who decided and then proceeded to tell generations of architects that boys need less privacy than girls? Who? Girls are always saying they want everything to be equal. Hello, the restroom facilities are not equal. Principles such as equality are as important to me as they were to my namesake, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Rules, our late, great 32nd president liked to say, are not necessarily sacred. Principles are. So I maintain a strict code of conduct based on my interpretation of the principles set forth by President Roosevelt in the New Deal. These include mental improvement, health promotion, risk avoidance. The sad state of boys' bathroom facilities had not yet hit the national scene when FDR was in office. Understandably, he had to figure out the Depression and World War II first. Historians could also argue that FDR was more concerned with job security than risk avoidance, but I am living proof that times have changed and the order of the principles needs to be shuffled around a bit. So every time I stand outside the boys' bathroom, health promotion and risk avoidance start duking it out in my mind. Health promotion. P, you've got to. Risk avoidance. Are you kidding? Protect your vitals. Health promotion. Use the staff bathroom by the office. Risk avoidance. What if Coach DeLemming's in there? By the 3rd week of 6th grade, my tendency to avoid risk was winning on a daily basis, and my lack of fluids was affecting my overall level of health so dramatically that I was forced to do what I try very hard not to do. And that, of course, was to call Gloria at the National Safety Foundation, or whatever that's called, and have a weird conversation with her. So as you can see, Franklin really hasn't changed. But middle school is a little bit different, and he feels a little more, what's the right word, vulnerable. Does it seem like a book that you would like to read?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Like when you have,
But, you know.
when you have ideas about books, do you keep it in a journal, or how do you go about when you get ideas about books?
Well, you know, it's strange because now that I've been publishing and writing books for about 25 years, and sometimes they just don't work. And, you know, I can write a whole book, like this, one of the ones I'm working on right now. I wrote the whole manuscript, and I knew it wasn't ready, and then my editor gave me comments, and then I wrote the whole manuscript again, and now I'm going to start all over again. So sometimes, you know, we think of writing a book as a very linear thing, and it is and it isn't. So I get ideas, but they mostly stay in my head until I start writing, and I've never really kept a notebook of ideas, and I certainly do not write outlines for my books. I used to when I first started writing books, but now I like to let the story unfold through the characters, and this is kind of hard to understand unless you've experienced it, but I like to let the characters tell the story. So I'll start writing, and I get so kind of involved in my head, it's almost like having a dream, and the characters sort of move the plot forward on their own. So they're basically telling me what to write.
Sammy?
What's an outline?
Well, that's where you kind of know, like, you know where the story's going to end, like, you know every piece of the story, and all you have to do is write it. And in my case, I sort of have an idea where I want the story to go, but I try not to be too tied to any particular ending, because as I said, I have found that I'll write a whole story, and then I realize the second half is all wrong. because I was trying to push it in one direction.
More questions? Sammy?
What are the bad parts about being an author?
Well, the way we get paid is not so great. You know, we get paid like if you work at Dairy Queen, for example, right? You work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then maybe a week later you get your paycheck. But the way we get paid is we get some money at the beginning, and then we finish our work, and then we get some money when the book is published, but that could be 9 months after we finish our work. And then we get royalties based on the sales of each book, but we often don't get those till a year afterwards, because the publisher has to make sure that the book was actually sold, because sometimes the bookstore orders it, and it sits in the bookstore and they don't sell it, so they send it back to the publisher. So the publisher doesn't want to pay me my royalty and then say, oh, we need that back. So they wait a really long time before they actually know what those sales are. I don't blame them, but it's kind of rotten. That's kind of one of the rotten parts. And so not knowing how much we'll be paid and not knowing when we'll be paid, that's kind of hard. And I would say really that's the only part I don't like about it.
About rejection letters.
Oh, Sue's like, how about rejection letters? Well, the funny thing about that is I haven't had one in a long time. It doesn't mean that things, like I said, I've just written a book twice and it hasn't worked out. So that's discouraging. Yeah, let's add that. That's discouraging. And then in the beginning, when I was first trying to get published, I could send something out 30, 40 times and it was rejected. So that kind of stinks too.
With the new
But what do you
technology-
like about it? But what do I like about it, Sue is asking me. Well, I love making up stories. If you're really creative and you like to tell stories, you may want to be a writer, even if you don't think you can write well. If you can tell a good story, you're at the beginning stages of becoming a good writer. And if you love watching movies and if you like taking them apart, like TV shows, and figuring out how they work, if you like making things up, of course, there's television, there's movies, there's books and video game narratives. There's all kinds of ways to use those talents in the world.
Shannon?
Do you like writing kid books or adult books more?
Well, I have only written kid books, and I'm not sure why that is. As you know from Donut Head, they're pretty sophisticated, so it's not like they're for little kids. They have big ideas and big words, and I was trained to write books for adults, but I've just always enjoyed more writing books for kids, so that's where I stayed.
With the technology, like you can buy books online and download them onto iPads and all that, do you get money from those types of books also?
Well, we should get royalties from those. The concern about that is that if illegal downloading occurs the way it does for pretty much every other thing on the internet, like music and TV shows and all that stuff, if you're a recording artist, they're tending to make their money now by doing concerts. And, people are they're not paying. I pay for the music I download, but not everybody does. If that starts to happen with ebooks, there's no way for us to recover that cost. We can't, there's nothing that authors can do, really. We can't go out and do big concerts and sell for $100 a ticket. So that piece of it concerns me a little bit, but I don't worry too much about it because our technology is changing so rapidly that it's kind of silly really to worry about what's going to happen in the next 2 years, because in 3 years it will all be different again. I don't think it ruins the kids' experience in any way to have it on a tablet or a Nook. that kids will want, and we will have books that talk back to us, books that are interactive, and that's going to be a different entertainment experience than reading a book. I like the idea of kids having to make up the images in their head because I think it strengthens their own creativity, but I think readers will want more activity if it's available.
Any other questions? Sammy?
How did you feel about the Harry Potter series?
Well, I think anything that gets kids talking and feeling like a community of readers is fantastic. I mean, Harry Potter was fantastic for reading, and I was lucky enough that my kids kind of grew up, so they're about 10 years older than you, and so when book 1 came out, they read it, and there was no movie. You know, and book 2 came out, there was no movie, so they were reading ahead of the movies, so they loved the movies, but the movies didn't tell them what the story was. A lot of kids now haven't read the books, but they've seen the movies. So I feel like we were lucky to have that because it was a fun experience that way. But Harry Potter was and is great for reading, so it is great.
Janet?
Have you ever read The Hunger Games?
Have I ever read
The Hunger Games.
Hunger Games? Oh, the Hunger Games. No, I haven't. See, when I'm working on books, and I'm almost always working on books, it's really hard for me to read other people's books because it's possible that, uh-oh, I've got a visitor. Oh, no, I don't. It's possible that I might take on some of their voice in my writing. You know, when I read that voice of Donut Heart, you know, it's this very particular style of writing, so I don't like to read other authors. And so basically, I don't get to read that much anymore, which is another bad thing about being an author. It's not that bad because I get to write, but it is frustrating sometimes. I've heard a lot about the Hunger Games.
Any other questions?
Well, we appreciate our time
Are we-
with you, Sue. Nobody.
Yeah.
We thoroughly enjoyed the book and thoroughly enjoyed talking to you.
I'm glad.
We-
Yeah, I'm glad. Have you finished all your questions?
I think so. So
Okay.
we will continue. We may order Donut Heart.
Yep.
Yeah. So we'll continue on.
Might have to get Donut Heart.
That's right.
Okay, well, it was great to talk to you guys. Asked wonderful questions.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
We connected to you.
Oh yeah, this is the one other book you guys might want to try. Harry Sue. It actually has a different paperback cover, but it's just for 5th graders too.
All right.
Well, thank you, Sue.
I have one more.
Okay, you take care. Bye. I guess you guys are right around lunchtime, right?
Well, we're
No.
on Central Time. We have another hour yet.